how united is the Tory party at the moment?
Cheers, Pip. Well, we're going to get the benefit of your wisdom. 3 decades as a Conservative MP. So, Liz Truss, she's just finished speaking. Government is too big, taxes are too high, and we are spending too much. She's right, isn't she?
Well, it's hardly a revelation at a Tory party conference. I mean, the government is too big, many of us believe, and spending is too high, but that's the easy bit. So if you want taxes to come down, which bits of spending do you want to cut? Or how do you get higher levels of growth and prosperity into the economy? So it's easy. The sloganising is the easy part. The policy part's the more difficult part. And it's got to be done in a way that's responsible, remembering that we are a country that borrows a lot of money and we have to maintain the confidence of the international markets.
Is it helpful for Liz Truss to be here making these arguments in public, or does it fracture a delicate unity?
I think the arguments are always there. The Tory party is perpetually in that discussion about how big the state should be, how high or low taxes ought to be. That's a proper debate to have in a democratic society. It's healthy that we do that. But we need to be focusing, I think, on how we create more wealth in our economy. We can't be in a perpetual discussion about is it more taxes for higher spending or lower taxes for less spending. We need also to talk about how we create more prosperity in our economy and deal with the elements, particularly for small businesses, that could be holding back their growth potential.
So you're with Jeremy Hunt, who is speaking to the conference this afternoon, that it's just not possible to contemplate any big income tax cuts.
Well, there are 2 questions in that. Number one is, can we afford to reduce taxes at all? And if we can, where should they be? I think that we will probably see a little more headroom as we go through the autumn and the winter. The reason for that being that as inflation comes down, the amount of government debt interest we have to pay goes down. This year, it looks as though we'll spend something like £100 billion on debt interest. That's the second biggest government spending after the NHS, for which we get nothing at all. You know, not a soldier, not a nurse, not a doctor, nothing at all. So, but as inflation falls, that number falls quite quickly. So at 5% inflation, for example, which was the government halving the target, that saves about 50 billion. So there may be some headroom by the time we get to the spring.
Inheritance tax, there seems to be a live debate in your party on inheritance tax. That would be like a big tax cut for the richest. Do you back it?
I would prefer to see any tax cuts on the wealth creating part of our economy. I want to see more small businesses thrive, because ultimately they will grow and pay the taxes that will enable us to have the spending. And I think that rather than reductions in any form of personal taxation, we should be looking at how we get those small businesses. Remember, only 17.5% of the population are in the public sector in Britain. 82.5% are in the private sector. Most of those are in small businesses. So that's where jobs are created. That's where wealth is created in the economy. We need to focus on how we grow our wealth as a country, not just how we spend it.
And for those not in work, those who have worked all their lives, the triple lock, is it affordable? Is it the right thing to do?
Well, whether it's affordable or not is dependent on how well the economy is performing. Of course, it looks at different elements. Inflation, it's been very expensive this year because inflation's been high, but then it's also pushed up debt interest, as I say. I think there are strong arguments for it. In principle, that those who have no other means of getting income and have worked all their lives are protected. I think that's a strong point of principle. But whether the triple lock is too expensive, is a technical question, but there's no doubt that in principle those who are on pensions need to be protected, and they need to have the standard of living rising at least as quickly as the earning public.
And can I get the benefit of your wisdom on general election timing? You've seen great victories, you've seen great Tory defeats. If you were advising, I'm sure you speak to Rishi Sunak all the time, but when should you go?
When it looks like you're going to win.
Go on, what do you reckon? When's that going to be?
So I think at the moment the public opinion is quite fluid on the doorstep.
Right.
a lot of people who might be a bit sullen about the government are certainly not attracted to Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. But I yet don't know what they stand for in any serious policy debate. And I think that if we see inflation fall, if we see the economy picking up in terms of speed, people will be worried about disrupting that and gambling on an unknown quantity like Keir Starmer and his Labour Party. So I think that if you look at the opinion polls, it's not unusual for governments to recover quite sharply as they go into their final year.
And you don't think this is a 1997 type scenario? You don't think that you can form a majority Tory government, though, surely?
Yes, I do.
Really?
And I think there is certainly a pathway to victory. And funnily enough, I was looking at the polls the other night, and since you're looking for the benefit of wisdom, so I was looking at one election when actually on the Sunday we had a shock poll that said that we were behind Labour for the first time in the campaign, and that was Mrs Thatcher's victory in 1979. So I take the polls always with a pinch of salt. To say politicians don't look at polls, of course, is profoundly dishonest. We all look at them, but I think that you can put too much emphasis on polls. And remember, in 1992, we were all expecting that there would be a Labour victory according to the polls. And I remember sitting in the car as the first results came in, thinking we're going to win.
Final question, and this is not about, well, it is about politics, but actually it's about getting the benefit of your thoughts as a former GP. We've got the NHS walkout today. We've got constant strikes. People say that they are fighting for the future of the NHS.
Well, they're not fighting for the future of the NHS. They're fighting for their salaries. And lots of doctors are not on strike. When the railways go on strike, we're always very careful to say it's the RMT or it's the ASLEF or whatever. This is the BMA that are on strike. A very large number of doctors are not taking part in this action. The real heroes on the NHS are not the ones on the picket lines, it's the ones on the wards and the doctors who are covering their absent colleagues. I actually think that for doctors, particularly to strike junior doctors and consultants at the same time, is actually unethical.
Always good to talk to you, Liam Fox. Thank you for being with us on GB News. Pip, Mark, that's the view from a Tory grandee.
Cephalogist as well, it seems now. Perhaps an extra string to the bow there in terms of looking at those polls and what might happen. But interesting chat.